Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful first National Science Apprenticeship Forum conference. This is the first time we've had this first National Science Conference, and it's wonderful to see you all here today. And it's also wonderful to welcome people online as well. So this is going to be hybrid meeting today. So we've got people in the room today, plus also people online. So welcome to both groups. This is all about entitled Apprenticeship to Impact, and that's really important, the impact that science apprentices make in the workplace. And it's here at the University of Nottingham, a wonderful setting. I'm Hilary Jeffries, and I'm going to be chairing the event today for you. This special event is very much designed for you as apprentices, and looking at the organising team that have designed it today, there's people who are apprentices, they've been apprentices, and also people who have a real passion for technical education and apprenticeships and want to support it as well. So it's very much designed for you today. With the Science Apprenticeship Forum teaming up with MI Talent, the University of Nottingham, the Royal Society of Chemistry and the Science Council to organise this event. And I'll also be thanking all the other people that have been involved supporting the event today. The organising team are wearing green lanyards, so just like myself. And if you've got any questions during the day, please feel free to approach us and ask us questions. I need to run through some housekeeping for the day. So there's no fire alarms planned for today, but in the event that the fire alarm does go off, what to do is make your way back out along the corridor and out towards the lake, and then along to the right and towards the actual PN display car park. There will be staff there to guide you in the direct direction from the hotel in the event of a fire. We have tea and coffee available all day and water as well. Now, if you haven't already turned off your mobile phones to silent, please do that now. And there will be a photographer taking photographs during the day. I know one or two of you have red dots on your badges just saying that you don't want photographs taken, so we recognise that. And slides and videos from today will be made available after the event. So the theme of the conference today is all about capturing the impact science apprentices make. And you cover a really large area in terms of impact. By coming today, you're demonstrating the impact on your personal development, but it's also the impact on your teams as well, and across your organisation, the scientific community, and the wider community. My background has been managing apprentices, scientists, and technicians delivering innovative products in the pharmaceutical and biotech field. And the apprentices have really played a key role, and it's been very fortunate where the companies have apprenticeship programs, but where they haven't, I've always encouraged them to actually get the apprenticeship programs in place, and they've really seen the benefits of it. And when I've seen the benefits, it's from the apprentices coming along and sharing their ideas and thoughts with the team. But it's also between the apprentices within the organisation. Not everybody's doing science apprenticeships, so there's different apprentices and you work together within an organisation, but also within different companies, because you're on training programs with different organisations attending your apprenticeships. And there's also thinking about what you actually do to inspire the next generation. Quite often, I've actually seen where the apprentices get together and they deliver STEM engagements and things like that. And you've done all these activities while balancing the needs of the role and also wanting to do off-the-job training as well, whether it's qualification or everything, and making sure that all comes together. And that's a lot actually within job in terms of that, as an apprenticeship. I've also been involved with development of standards and the promotion of the benefits and the impact of apprenticeships. And I've also been involved with the assessment as well, the endpoint assessment. So the conference has been designed to have a high impact. We've got a lot of activities today. So including presentations, workshops, posters, and exhibitions. And it's a wonderful networking opportunity for you to get together, and also as part of your continuing professional development. We have two main presentations today. The first from the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. And the Institute for Apprenticeship and Technical Education work with employers to develop, approve, and review apprenticeships and also other technical qualifications as well. So the presentation is designed to help you succeed in apprenticeship assessment. It's very important. At the end of the day, you want to succeed in your apprenticeship. Then in the afternoon, we have the keynote where Kelly Veer, MBE, will be sharing a technical career journey and giving you ideas and inspiration. We also have a short presentation later today from a couple of members of the Science Apprenticeship Forum, highlighting how you can get in touch along with some of the benefits. The forum is all about creating an environment in which apprentices across all scientific disciplines can thrive and have three main aims. So the first one is raising the quality of apprenticeships through the learner voice. The second is to increase the awareness of scientific apprenticeships through outreach. And the third is to provide support and mentoring to individuals enrolled on scientific apprenticeships. So you can see today's event very much fits into the Apprenticeship Forum. We have 3 workshop sessions during the day. So we have covering endpoint assessments. We have that, and it's depending on your level. We have different endpoint assessment preparation workshops. We have one on career planning. We have confidence in presenting, and we also have one on professional registration. We also have posters as well from the apprentices. There was an opportunity to submit posters, whether you're in the room today or online. So please take the time to go and view the posters that are across the corridor and get some inspiration and ideas from it. In terms of the judging, I'll be part of the judging panel along with Sarah Allen from MI Talent and Nathan Dixon, who is on behalf of the prize sponsor Tiro. We'll be announcing and presenting the prizes during the last session at the end of the day. There's also a focus group on the theme Apprentices Experiences taking place in the morning and afternoon with the Education and Training Foundation. This is a drop-in informal session to share your views on what could make apprenticeships even better. So one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to do a big thank you, because this event couldn't happen without a lot of people coming together. So I want to thank our venue sponsors. So that's MI Talent and the University of Nottingham for this wonderful venue today for the event. Also, I mentioned about the posters. So I want to thank our poster competition sponsor, Tiro. And also the exhibitors, and also those who were supporting travel bursary sponsors. So we have Tiro, SciAS, Manchester Metropolitan University, the Royal Society of Chemistry, Marshall Assessment, the Institute of Physics, the Science Council, University of Kent, and ABPI. So a big thank you for that. And this is just the programme for this morning in terms of that. So the first part, we've got the endpoint assessments I've talked about already, and then moving into the first workshop is on professional registration. So it's now time for me for the first presentation, and I'm very pleased to welcome John Heap, Assessment Policy Lead at the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, and he will be giving a presentation entitled Endpoint Assessment and Common Assessment Techniques, Prepare to Succeed. This presentation will give you an overview of what endpoint assessment is and what to expect, the purpose and design of the assessments, and an overview of the common assessment methods used in science apprenticeships. Within the allocated time, we've allocated 5 minutes for questions at the end. So I'll come back and join John on the stage. So please save your questions in the room to the end of John's presentation. And for those joining us online, please type your questions, and the room host will highlight a couple of common questions that we can ask John at the end of the presentation. So if I can hand over to John.
Okay, good morning. Thank you very much for the invite today. Nobody is more surprised than me to see myself wearing a Royal Society of Chemistry lanyard. For 20 years, I was a history teacher and examiner before moving full-time into assessment and assessment policy and things like that. So it's probably a bit of a shock. It would be a massive shock to my science teachers as well to see me standing in front of you today. But the one thing I do know an awful lot about and have learned an awful lot about over the last few years is how assessment works and how it is designed to work and how it is supposed to operate. If I can hopefully move on. Yeah, it's just a click. There we go. Okay, so let's start with a quick question. A show of hands, how many of you are likely to sit endpoint assessment in the next 12 months in the room, obviously at home? Right, okay, and that's why you're here today, because you need the information. This is good. Second question then, How many of you know which methods will actually be used as part of your endpoint assessment? Okay, for those of you who are not here and are not in the room, you will be interested to know, as I thought might happen, that we've got a lot of people coming up for endpoint assessment in the next 12 months, and probably a quarter of those people put their hands up to know which methods will be used as part of your endpoint assessment. So hopefully what I have to tell you today is timely. We're going to look at 3 different things. The first one is the purpose of endpoint assessment. What is it and why do we do it, and why is it designed the way it is designed? I don't want to get too heavily into policy and the intentions of it. You don't need to know everything, but it's useful, I think, to understand kind of what the status of endpoint assessment is, why it exists, why we have this system. The second one is probably the most critical for most of you in the room today, which is how does endpoint assessment work? So in other words, what are the methods? What are the things that happen during the process? Third, and I think it's really important for you to take this away from today, is kind of what next? What do you need to do? What do you need to learn? I've spent many years preparing people for assessments, as well as spending a lot of years writing assessments, writing assessment support materials. If you ever did GCSE history, there's probably a 70% chance that I wrote one of the examiner's reports that you read and your teachers told you was very important. So I know all about preparing people for assessments. Preparing people for assessments is about asking the right questions and getting to know the right things and kind of demystifying endpoint assessment a little bit for you. So firstly, the purpose of endpoint assessment. Previously, it had been the sort of tradition in vocational education in this country that we would assess people bit by bit during their learning. So, you know, you would learn a few skills and we would test it, and you would sort of put together some kind of framework of competence. It's felt that actually what we really need to do to understand if somebody knows their job well is to assess them at the end of their training so that we can see everything operating at once. Okay, there's no point in knowing that you know safety regulations in isolation. We need to see you actually doing that as part of an everyday role. So we need to watch people doing those things. The other idea is that we need to measure your performance against the knowledge, skills, and behaviors that are set out by employers as key to your occupation. And this is one of the really fundamental things about apprenticeships. I work for the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. We're an arm's length body of the Department for Education. We don't, as it were, write the apprenticeship standards. You know, we facilitate employers to create and revise those standards. So everything we do is employer-led. Everything we do is designed to put you on a qualification and to put you through something that employers have designed and therefore will value. So when you come to be sort of moving around the jobs market, we've created something that hopefully is transferable and employers value. So we need some kind of measurement against what employers think your occupation you should be able to do, what you should be able to know, and how you should be able to work in the workplace. The other thing that it can be important for is a sort of certification of your occupational competence. And for many of you, it will also lead to a sort of license to practice. Professional bodies are extremely important in the sciences, as they are in some other occupations, but it's really important that that is part of the process as well. You will, I think, be aware that endpoint assessment sometimes sits alongside other qualifications that you're doing. And there is a move going on at the minute to kind of integrate endpoint assessment with those qualifications. But for many of you, that will not be something that happens immediately to you. We also grade endpoint assessments, and who doesn't like having a distinction, okay, on something? Who doesn't like having a merit on their sort of educational record? Everybody wants to have that. So we also allow the grading as well, so that you can show exceptional performance. And for some employers, that's a really useful thing to know about someone. Also, as I've mentioned, some occupational standards contain mandatory qualifications. We know that in the sciences and other areas that there is already a currency for certain qualifications. You know, we know that some degrees, we know that some certificates already hold real importance in terms of working in your occupation. So you will often sit perhaps another mandatory qualification alongside it, and that is increasingly becoming kind of integrated into one package. So the purpose of endpoint assessment and where it works is the idea that it starts at the point at which you have completed your professional training. Now, I know that the quality of training that you are undergoing and the work that you are doing is extremely rigorous. Okay, we know that it's a huge commitment for people to work, you know, for sort of 80% of the time with the employer and spend a minimum of 20% of your time. For some of you, that'd be quite a lot more doing your studying. And there's a huge body of knowledge that you've gained over that time. The central concept then in this whole process is what we call gateway. And this is really important for endpoint assessment, because this doesn't happen in your normal kind of certification or qualifications. This didn't happen at your GCSEs. There wasn't a point at which somebody sat down with you and said, right, you can move on to exams now. You just got to the end of year 11 and had to do them, whether you were ready for it or whether you were not entirely ready for it. But with Gateway, that's essentially an agreement between you, your employer, your training provider, that you're ready to be assessed, that you have already reached the level of occupational competence. And that's really important, because that's something that you should gain a lot of confidence from. Your employer, your training provider, you yourself have said, do you know what, I think I am now ready at this point. Now, for those of you working in some apprenticeships, you will find that actually this is sort of pretty much dictated by academic years. For other apprenticeships, it's a little bit more fluid than that. But there is a point at which you all sit down and go, you know, I'm ready. And it's only then that we start endpoint assessment. So any work that is actually assessed only goes on at the point where you are kind of ready to sit that assessment. So it's not going to be something that appears all of a sudden. I'm incredibly conscious of time today. Now, I think this is the substance of what I want to talk about today. In apprenticeship assessment, we have a number of different assessment methods. I'm currently involved in a piece of research which is looking at how all of these are operating, and I spent a lot of time over the summer talking to apprentices, talking to training providers, talking to employers, talking to endpoint assessment organizations in particular who carry out these assessments. You know, how are these working? Is there anything we can do to help improve them? Now, all of your endpoint assessments will contain these in various combinations. Sometimes two of these methods will sit closely together, and you'll be expected to learn, you'll be expected to kind of operate one or two of these in the same kind of sitting. So they happen in various combinations. There's a minimum of two. So you'll always have a couple of distinct methods. Now, the idea behind that is obviously you need the opportunity to be able to show your occupational competence, or perhaps to show your exceptional performance. We also need to give everybody the opportunity to succeed. And it's nice when you think, well, I may not be as strong on that one, but I am pretty strong on the other method. And it gives you that sense of balance, and that sense that you're going to have some way in which you can show your work at its best. The first and kind of fundamental one is observation. Now, if you see somebody says you're going to have an observation as part of your endpoint assessment, then what will happen is that an independent person will come in and they will watch you doing your job in kind of live circumstances, which you go, that sounds a bit scary, but it's not really. They are told to be unobtrusive. The person observing you will be qualified to a level which has been dictated in the assessment plan. Okay, it's not some generic person who doesn't know anything about your occupation. That you will be watched by an occupational expert. They're going to know what they're talking about when they watch you. You will have breaks, you know, you will have a time for a cup of coffee. You know, these things are designed to be quite sort of friendly and just to watch you doing your job in natural circumstances. Now, some science apprenticeships have these observations. Observation is changing quite a bit because obviously the world of work is changing quite a bit over the past few years, and particularly during the pandemic. Suddenly nobody could go and observe. So remote observation, online observation, it's worth finding out. Is this going to be somebody actually visiting you and physically being in the room with you? There is a possibility in some apprenticeships that it might be somebody remotely observing what you're doing. And that is an increasing feature of some assessment plans. But observation is kind of just naturally occurring evidence. You know, what do you do in your role? So, for example, you know, I think as level 3 lab technician, you will be sitting there you'll have 3 hours of observation. Somebody will watch you doing your job. They will make sure that you're following the appropriate safety regulations. They will make sure that you are, you know, using the right quality systems, etc. The idea is to see you in your natural environment. Closely related to that, but not quite as popular in the sciences, is the practical assessment, which is essentially quite similar, but is usually in a kind of artificial setup. So you will sort of go to an assessment center and somebody will watch you doing a set task. This is usually has to be done where your normal workplace is kind of too unpredictable and it's kind of hard to know what's going to happen from day to day. So a practical assessment is a sort of thing where you usually go to an assessment center or somebody will set up a series of activities for you. It's also quite a popular method. Now, the third one is the test. Now, there's no getting away from the fact that knowledge in science is important. And looking at the age of most of the people in the room, you will know that school education over the last sort of decade or so has become very much more focused on knowledge-based curriculum. So in other words, knowing stuff is important, okay? And remembering stuff is important. And a lot of science assessments will have a test. But what you need to know is, well, what does that test look like? Okay, the test that you do at level 6 is going to look potentially very different to something at level 3. So these assessments, these tests, okay, can vary a lot, okay, from the lower levels up to the high levels. A local 6-1 college to me on results day was sort of celebrating their successes, and their first interview was with a very enthusiastic student who was going on to do a science apprenticeship and going, I'm so pleased to have got my GCSEs done because I hate tests and I don't want to do any more tests. And I'm thinking, oh no, because you are going to have to do tests at some point. Multiple choice question tests, often sat remotely. You know, they may be paper based, sitting there ticking boxes. I think we still have some of that. You know, we still have a wonderful eccentric system in this country with public exams. You've done your GCSEs or A-levels, you'll know you write everything on paper, then it gets sent off and scanned and marked by somebody on a computer. But a lot of these tests are moving online. Multiple choice questions are done online. They're often not very lengthy. They often have a pass mark. Sometimes they will have within them, you know, certain questions you need to get right. So if there are safety critical elements to your job, it may be that some of those questions are more important than others. You know, you need to get these ones correct. But tests also can vary, and sometimes it's quite useful for there to be a sort of more developed written test. So at high levels, you may find yourself writing sort of paragraphs in response to a question. The great thing about tests is that, you know, you're familiar with them. You know what a test looks like. Everybody's done tests at some point. You may not like the idea of them, but generally speaking, these are far more sensibly designed and far more manageable than things you might have done in the past. So tests often appear in science assessments. It's worth knowing exactly what form that appears in. Don't just go, oh, there's a test apparently. You know, are you going to learn multiple choice questions? Are you going to be writing paragraphs? Have you seen what these tests look like? Very popular, incredibly popular in a lot of assessment plans, but increasingly and very much so in the science is the concept of the professional discussion or the interview. Now, I think it's really worth unpacking what those two are. Interview, professional discussion, is often something that people find a little bit intimidating as a concept, right? This isn't really what I wanted to do in my career. You know, I'm happy doing the stuff, I'm happy doing the role, I'm happy doing the job. Did I necessarily want to spend time interacting and discussing it with somebody? But the people who will be running these are always highly skilled and they know exactly how to put you at ease. Generally speaking, a lot of endpoint assessment organizations now will have a sort of soft introduction, or you will kind of know a bit about who's going to be talking to you. You might have an agenda for the meeting, what you're going to be talking about. Often it will be based around a piece of work that you have done in any case. You will almost always have a portfolio of evidence that you've gathered over the period of your learning to support you. So these discussions, interviews are not designed to catch you out, okay? You know, job interviews, they're not like a job interview. They are about a technical understanding of your role. So nobody's going to ask you those kind of mad questions that they put in the newspapers every year. You know, when Oxford and Cambridge do their recruitment and they will ask you some stupid questions. Or as I was asked once in an interview, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? You know, I have no idea what that was designed to elicit, but I didn't accept the job. If you're asking questions like that, why? There's going to be nothing off the wall. It's not designed to catch you out. So an interview is generally somebody will lead you through. So they will ask you technical questions about your role or how your role operates. A professional discussion is a little bit different in the sense that you are expected to sort of be on a level par with the assessor. You're expected to kind of lead that discussion in parts as well. You know what the topics are that you're talking about. It will be something you know a lot about, but professional discussion is seen as you know, a really useful way of finding out what you know about in your profession. I think it's really useful for you to kind of find out what the format is going to be, who will be involved, how many people, what sort of questions you'll be expected to ask, but also what are people looking for in your professional discussion. If you want to really shine and get your merits and distinctions, you know, what are the criteria for that? It's worth asking your training providers. It's worth talking to and looking at the brilliant resources that a lot of endpoint assessment organizations produce. If you're in a university, people will talk to you about these things and exactly what you're expected to show. The other one that is very, very popular in science apprenticeships is the project. And this is great because this is a naturally occurring piece of work, or it should be. They'll be a little bit artificial in the sense that there'll be a kind of time limit on it. It'll only happen once you've gone through Gateway. But you need to discuss with your employer a genuine piece of work that fits the criteria, fits the timing, and therefore you're already engaged in a really discrete, useful piece of work. And anybody who wants to make progress in their career needs at some point to be able to point to really discrete, useful pieces of work that you've done that had a clear outcome, had a clear purpose, that had a clear outcome, and showed off your skills and your knowledge in order to be able to complete it. So projects are extremely popular. You won't normally just hand in a project. Generally speaking, there'll be some other thing that goes with it. So often you've done this piece of work, there'll be questioning that comes about as a result of it. Often in science apprenticeships, we're kind of bound up with presentations and questioning as well. So what we have is you will be asked to produce a presentation about a piece of work that you've done or a subject of interest that you need to talk about. Those sometimes now are happening online. It'd be increasingly efficient because actually that's what we're doing in work now, and so it's quite a good thing that it's happening like that. Sometimes there will be to a small group of people, and you will be expected to answer questions afterwards. So those are the general categories into which all of your assessments fit. Sometimes, as I say, there'll be a combination of those. Sometimes some of those will be brought together to sort of create a whole package, but you will always have to do more than one of those. So the big thing then, I think, is really to ask kind of, well, what next when it comes to preparing for EPA? The first thing to be checking, because you're in it now and you're in some cases only a few months away, am I going to need a portfolio and what needs to be in it? I'm sure that people, if you do need one, will have talked to you about it. Portfolios can vary in length, what can be included, etc. Are you really clear about what is in a portfolio? It's usually naturally occurring evidence around your job. It's not usually subjective opinions from people. It's usually, you know, sort of maybe witness testimony of something that you have done, very factual reporting of things that you've done, or a training that you've attended, or whatever it is. But make sure that you know who's collecting it, how it's collated, what needs to be in it. If people are talking to you about a portfolio, they're very, very common in a lot of apprenticeships. They're not assessed in themselves, so you don't get a mark or a grade for a portfolio. It's usually a supporting document in order to help you. So if you're going to a professional discussion, it's great, really comforting. You know, it's an open book exam in a way. You know, you're walking in with the things that you've done and things to remind you of what you've done. You know, what methods are going to be used in my endpoint assessment? A lot of people didn't know the answer to that question, so it's worth knowing about that. I think as well, it's useful to be prepared kind of mentally for what is expected. the purpose of endpoint assessment is not to provide some sort of great extra challenge at the end. It's really to confirm what has been said at Gateway, that you are occupationally competent. We're going to have an independent person verify that. So when you go to other employers saying, I've got my apprenticeship, or you want promoted at work in the future, I know somebody trying to employ you potentially that actually there's an independent stamp on it. So that's what it's there for. It's also there to provide you with grades. So it's not designed to be something that just sort of jumps at you and gives you a surprise. So make sure that you know what methods are going to be used. They should be methods that are kind of arise out of your natural everyday job anyway. Okay, we expect that, you know, most of you will be able to hold a good professional discussion with colleagues about the work that you're undertaking. So this is your chance to kind of learn how to do that well, but make sure you know, and make sure you know in plenty of time. Are there support materials? The answer to that question obviously should be yes, there are support materials. If there are not, then you maybe need to have a word with somebody. Email me. I'd be interested to know. But my experience over the summer talking to apprentices has been in the last 3 or 4 months that generally speaking, they feel very well supported and that there are good quality support materials. Those doing your assessments will generally, you know, provide things like, you know, mock tests or, you know, preparation materials for a professional discussion. But you need to kind of know what's going on. I think part of the excitement of the journey that you're on as apprentices is that you're not just kind of sitting there doing exams and doing tests. You are developing as professionals. And I think this is a really good opportunity as part of your professional development to realize that you're in something as an apprentice which is collaborative. You know, an apprenticeship is a huge collaborative effort between a lot of people, between you, your employer, people doing the assessment, training providers, and you need to play a part in that. So if you think, oh, I need to know a little bit more about this, it's a great professional skill to be able to go to people and say, I think I need a little bit more help with this. You know, I'm not feeling as confident as I might be. So, you know, you can find those out and you should go along and look. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. No worries. We've got to look for grading descriptors as well. You know, how are you going to be graded? Quite often what will happen is that, you know, you will know exactly what you need to pass, but do you know how to reach those higher levels? Some people become a little bit confused about when will it take place, how long will it last. Make sure that you've got very clear instructions about that. You know, if my project is going to be 3 months long, it's a 12-week project, then please make sure that you've talked to your employer about that and they know that it's going to be a 12-week project and that you can plan a piece of work around that. Again, part of this professional dialogue, you know, is there anything I need my employer to help with? If I'm going to be doing a project or something, you know, is there something that they can help me upskill me a little bit with, or can we start talking about what that might be nice and early? Key as well, do I need reasonable adjustments? Okay, a lot of people have special educational needs which require some kind of reasonable adjustment. If you're receiving a reasonable adjustment in the workplace, for example, in order to help you do your job, it's obviously very reasonable that in endpoint assessment will take account of that as well. Because if you do need any of those adjustments, it's really important that everybody is aware of that and they know, and that that can be sorted for you in good time. The requirements for that are generous. You know, if you need something, you will get what you need. And also, have I met the Gateway requirements? You know, make sure that you understand that at Gateway there are technical things that you need to have done, you need to have shown in order to be able to progress to EPA. And it's worth knowing those well in advance of your Gateway, not with sort of a week to go, or I needed to complete this portfolio. You know, do you need to do that 6 months beforehand or start working on it earlier? It's all about questions. It's all about you asking questions. It's all about dialogue. It's all about collaboration. And if you can do all of those things, then I think endpoint assessment should be quite an enjoyable process. Okay, I think questions, if that's okay. Yeah. So thank you. At 11:09. Well.
Yeah. It is, you know, it is extensive endpoint assessment.
Yeah.
It's a really good introduction. Catherine, have we got some questions online? Yes, if you could call out a few questions for John.
Yeah, thanks. So we've got a question from Olivia who asks, according to the IfATE website, the Level 6 Laboratory Scientist program is currently being revised. It states, in the meantime, the version below remains approved for delivery. If the program was revised and approved in, say, January 2024, would the new revised program then be applicable to all of the apprentices currently on the course, for example, those in their final year, or would it just be for new apprentices that join after that date?
Generally speaking, and it's worth checking exactly in the individual circumstances, but whenever we make a revision, there is always a lead-in time for that new revision. So that is always clearly stated, and your provider should be able to tell you exactly what's going to happen, because quite often there might be an option to use a new assessment, and sometimes they're better than the old plan. So you might actually want to use the new endpoint assessment, and there will sometimes be an option to do that. So it's a really good question for your training provider. But wherever we make a revision, we are aware that there are already people on program who need to carry those through. So we will often have a lot of live versions of those assessment plans. So you should be going through with the assessment plan which you were expecting to when you started. So that should be fine, I think.
Is there a second question from online?
Yeah, there is. Hopefully that's answered your question, Olivia. And we've got one from Patricia who says, how long will the assessment, observation and interview last?
It varies. I mean, I think at level 3, typically you could be looking at an observation of, say, in bits of maybe sort of 3 hours, something like that. I know in terms of interviews, again, it can vary quite a lot. If it's a sort of Viva style interview, you know, on a level 7 course, I don't know, we could be talking about quite a lengthy discussion, do we think? You know, so it's worth checking your individual plans, but all your plans are on the IfATE website. So if you know which apprenticeship you're on, you can look at the endpoint assessment plan for it, and it will specify exactly how long an interview is supposed to last, but it can vary quite a bit between different standards.
So there's no opportunity opening to the room. Do you have any questions in the room for John on the endpoint assessment? Who's going to be first to ask the question? It's always daunting the first time. Yep, okay.
Hi, so at what point are we notified as which methods we're going to be assessed on for the EPA?
Well, if you know your program and you know which apprenticeship you're on, you can find that out immediately. So if you go to the IfATE website and look up your standard, there's an assessment plan there and it will tell you exactly which methods will be used. Now, we design the overall plan, so we state which methods are going to be used. We also state things like how long they will last and sort of basic criteria around them. But it's then down to kind of your training provider, I think, is the person you should speak to about exactly what it'll look like on the day. You know, we will state, for example, that a test has to take place, but whether that's going to be online using remote proctoring or whether you're going to be going to an exam center to do that, they will answer those kind of level of questions. But if you want to know what methods you're using, go to the IfATE website, look at your standard, and the EPA plan will be there, and it will tell you in the first very little bit of the plan exactly what methods you're going to be using.
And we have time for one more question in the room. Okay, was there any online? Yeah, one more online.
So we've got another question online which says, can we get a mock endpoint assessment before the actual one at any point?
Yeah, it's very common for people to do mock endpoint assessments. Again, speak to your providers, they will generally do that. In terms of tests and things, there's usually really good materials available to do mock tests and things like that. But that is, generally speaking, sort of part of the training that people do. And I think that's become much more common for people to be really well prepared. But your providers will talk to you about that. And it's definitely something that's worth doing. Okay.
Okay, so please join me. Thank you, John.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, then we're just moving on to our first workshop of the day. So when you registered for the event, you were allocated a workshop. Katie's just going to confirm slight change in the workshop allocation.
Yeah, thank you. Right, so if you are on a level 5 standard, you will be going to an EPA prep workshop in Triumph 3. If you are on the first half of the level 6s, which you would have spoken to me or Tom about this morning, you will be going into Rally 2, which is next door. And if you are on the level 7 program, you'll be going into Triumph 2. If you are none of those people, you are staying here for professional registration. Okay, thank you.
And those joining us online are also for professional registration.
Can you hear me okay? Brilliant. Okay. Fantastic. Okay, good morning, everyone. Very nice to be here today. My name is Tom Cheek. I'm the apprenticeship lead at the Science Council. It's so great to see so many faces, science apprentices here today. And for those of you joining us online, I hope you find this session useful. The next 35 or 40 minutes, we're going to be talking about professional registration. Very lucky I've got Sophie here today as well. Sophie was an apprentice and is also gone through the process of being professionally registered. So during the stage today and through the presentation, I'll be asking Sophie for some of her input and experiences that I hope you might find useful. Okay, so in terms of the session, there's 3 key objectives that I hope I can share with you today. First of all, we'll talk about the features and benefits of being a member with a professional body whilst you're an apprentice, because there's the opportunity to enhance your learning, to support your learning outcomes through that engagement. Then we'll go a little bit further and we'll look at the benefits of being professionally registered and how you can do that on completion of your apprenticeship in most cases. And the routes to becoming professionally registered depend on the occupation that you're in, the level of the apprenticeship, whether you're from England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. There's a whole range of options. But my intent today is to be able to share with you that summary so you can leave here today feeling a bit more aware about the opportunities that are available to you. As I noted, Sophie's joining me here for this morning's session, and Daryl's also going to contribute some comments later on this afternoon. But as I work through this slide deck, any that have a light bulb symbol is when I'll be asking Sophie to come in and to contribute some thoughts and some insights. Additionally, I'm quite ambitious with how much stuff I'm trying to provide today, so there might not be much time for taking direct questions as we work through the slides. But if you see a slide similar to this, it'll be provided with maybe 1 or 2 questions just for you to think about and pause and think about how this content may relate to yourselves as individuals. It may raise some questions for yourself. I would actively encourage you to go and speak to the professional bodies that are here today exhibiting in the middle, because they'll be able to support you in that way. We've got a Science Council stand. Again, we'll be able to give you some more guidance. And if you're online, you can post a question through my email, which is available on the final slide. Okay, post-workshop support. The slide deck that's being shared today will be available to you outside of today's event. So don't feel you need to scribble down furiously. It's all going to be there for you when you need it. And we also have a technical education website that's showing on this particular slide. And on here, you can find all the information about the different registers we're going to talk about, the professional bodies and membership. You can access tips and tools that will help you to work through the process so that you can look to become professionally registered once you've completed your apprenticeship. There's digital downloads, there's online guidance, there's a whole load of learning assets on that site that can really help you get a better understanding of the opportunities in this space. And apart from today being a more kind of general summary, we also offer more specific workshops where we'll look at the cohort of apprentices and support you directly with saying, for your apprenticeship, this is the route that you need to take to become professionally registered. So today is more of a summary, but there is access to more specific workshops and toolkits outside of today. So let's first of all start with that first point, looking at professional body membership and how it can support you as an apprentice, enhance your learning and support your learning outcomes. And I thought I'd start off with just by providing a definition we use at the Science Council of what is a professional body. So as it notes here, a professional body is an organisation with individual members practising a profession or occupation, in which that organisation maintains an oversight of the knowledge, skills, conduct and practice of that profession or occupation. So it has massive convening power, massive collaboration power. It has an oversight to think about the workforce skill needs and how it can best support individuals and workplaces and employers in that space. Now, the Science Council, we're a membership organisation and we're made up of 36 professional bodies and learned societies, as displayed on this slide. And what you'll note immediately is just how broad-ranging it is. It really does cover so many different industries, so many different occupations, so many different professionalisms. So you can find a professional body that's the right home for you. So a moment of pause for thought. So for some things for you to consider at this point is that, are you already a member of a professional body? If you are and you're an apprentice, it might be that you're a student member, an apprentice member, or an affiliate member, as a way of an example. And if you are already a member, who introduced you to that idea of professional body membership? Now, we concluded some research earlier this year. We had about 300 apprentices feed back to us. And at that time, 59% were not engaged with professional body as a member. So the majority of apprentices at that time, are not a member of a professional body. And for those that were a member, 62% of them were due to their employer or their mentor suggesting to them that it was a good idea and something to consider for their career. So at this point, just start thinking in your mind about what you feel the benefits are of being a member of a professional body. Or again, if you already are, what features do you value the most? And when you're taking that moment to think about it, I'm going to pass over to Sophie just to share your own reflections on how you went about selecting your professional body and what you value most.
So for me, the IST was suggested. I did have a read around other professional bodies, and like my line manager was already registered with the Royal Society of Biology. But for me, in my current technical career path, the IST was most suitable. And then in terms of what I value most is having access to conferences that are appropriate and focused to my grade and role. And having good opportunities to get work published and having a network of like-minded individuals, and it's good for CPD opportunities as well.
Right, thank you, Sophie. So with some of Sophie's inputs there, and you might be thinking about some of these as potential, some potential benefits. Access to networks, as you mentioned there. By being a member with a professional body, you can connect with others in your field. Now that's great for your professional network, as it's showing on this slide. But as an apprentice, it's also really powerful for growing your personal learning network. It will allow you to explore the knowledge, the skills and the behaviours that you're developing as an apprentice, but maybe contextualising it or debating it with others who might have a different perspective or come from a different employer who can share it in a different way. You get access to events, and those events may be covering multiple subjects. It could be an advancement in the particular field for which you work. And also with professional bodies, there's work to try to support accessibility through grants and awards to enable you to get full benefit of those. Conferences and workshops. So similar to today, where there's a series of activity dedicated to yourself as apprentices. Conferences by professional bodies may be focusing specifically on that industry or that occupation. You can learn about latest research, technology, best practices in your field. You can attend and you can also contribute. So there's great opportunity to engage as much as you wish to. And professional bodies share a lot of publications, whether that's through journals or newsletters, industry updates, membership magazines. There's a plethora of content there that can really help you and expand your knowledge beyond the confines of those knowledge, skills and behaviours of specifically your apprenticeship, giving you a deeper learning experience. There may be access to continuous professional development activities, workshops, training, again, giving you that extra depth. Mentoring programs, many professional bodies give you access to maybe more experienced professionals who may be able to support you and navigate aspects of your career. In terms of horizon scanning, you can see where the future may be within your industry. Where could there be opportunity? How do you future-proof your skill set? And how do you position yourself to make best use of that? There may be the opportunity to be involved in outreach. I know there's a good number of individuals here today who are really heavily involved in, as an apprentice, promoting science careers, promoting apprenticeships as a way to do that, inspiring the next generation, showing the power of apprenticeships. And the final comment on this particular slide is it gives you the chance to contribute your voice, your apprentice voice, into the policy space, whether that's through special interest groups or committees, and that can influence the way that the industry progresses and moves, and it gives you a chance to express your experiences. And that's not an exhaustive list, that's just a kind of summary of what professional body membership could look like. Now, going back to that research that I mentioned earlier, around about 300 apprentices feeding back, we asked about the wants, needs, aspirations and challenges of being an apprentice. And these were identified as the key wants and needs. Apprentices fed back to us that they wanted more access to face-to-face networking opportunities, similar to today. Access to mentoring, webinars, training courses, masterclasses, conferences, and articles and research. And as we've just kind of summarised in those first, well, maybe the last 3 or 4 slides, that's something that professional bodies can really support with and fill that void. And as I note again, if you're here not as an apprentice, but as a training provider or as an employer, the feedback that we received is that most apprentices are members because of their employer or their training or their mentor saying that it's a good, positive thing to do for their career. So if you can engage with those particular individuals, it's a great way to support ourselves as apprentices to engage. Now here today, we have 5 of our professional bodies that form part of the Science Council community and the Science Council exhibiting in the central space. So again, I'd actively encourage you outside of today's session, go and speak to those, find out what their membership offer is like for an apprentice and how that may support you actively from today. If you're not here in person, all of these organisations have a website and you can get access to the various membership levels and contact details. So that's the first part. That's talking about professional body membership whilst you're an apprentice. We're now going to look at professional registration and how that's different. So I'm obviously here from the Science Council. Two of our registers are the Registered Science Technician, RSci Tech, and Registered Scientist, RSci. So professional registration, what is it? In the context of these particular registers, it's a voluntary means of demonstrating your professionalism. I know we have some apprentices from the healthcare sector where there may be more mandatory regulation for certain types of registration, but for RSci Tech and RSci, it's a voluntary means. As part of that, you're showing that you've got the knowledge, skills, abilities, competence, and you adhere to particular standards, all of which is assessed by your peers. So it's by those already on the register who assess whether you are showing those particular abilities and competencies. It gives to you independent recognition outside of the framework of apprenticeships. So it shows that you're working to these exact standards expected in industry. And those expectations, those standards are recognised across a massive range of the sciences. So as we go back to some of those earlier slides, when we looked at those professional bodies that make up the Science Council community, 36 in total, these registrations align across all of those different types of occupations and sectors, giving parity. The Science Council does not award to you registered scientist or registered science technician. It's the professional body who are licensed to do so. Now, a significant part of registration is competency. You have to work through a competency framework. And competence is probably a word we're quite comfortable with apprenticeships. It's used often when we're looking at how we're developing our knowledge, skills and behaviours. In the context of registration, it's demonstrating that you've got a sufficiency of knowledge and skills that means you can do your job really well, really effectively in a wide variety of settings. So that high level of learning, you've got the knowledge, but can you apply it to different types of settings and scenarios? Now, for those registers, they're based around 5 key areas. The first area is application of knowledge and understanding. You have to demonstrate that you can apply scientific concepts and principles, and you have to demonstrate that you can interpret data and evaluate data. There's personal responsibility. So you have to show that you can work consistently, effectively, and that you can work safely. Interpersonal skills, you have to show that you've got the effective communication and the effective behaviour skills needed to be able to work both internally with your colleagues and externally with stakeholders as well. There's professional practice. So this is where you have to show that you can recognise and resolve problems, you can use resources really effectively, and you can identify where processes could potentially be improved and how you can contribute to that. And then the final section is professionalism. And this is where you have to show that you can follow codes of conduct and that you're committed to maintaining and enhancing your own area of practice. So when we're looking at those registers, they're the 5 key areas. And then those 5 areas are expanded out into more detail, into competencies. So if you're looking to be a registered science technician, there's 14 competencies that you need to demonstrate. And for registered scientists, there are 15 competencies spread across those A to E categories. So again, back to yourself and thinking how this may apply to you. Have a moment to start thinking about what you think the benefits of being professionally registered are and how that might be different to membership. And while you're having that moment, I'll pass over to Sophie again to ask what motivated you to become professionally registered and what do you value most?
So in the university, it's quite common for people to use post-nominals after their name on like email signatures and stuff. So when I got my professional registration, I had it before having a BSc post-nominal. So by being professionally registered, I was able to use that on like something and on emails and stuff. And then that encouraged people to ask, how I got it, what did I need to do to get it. And then furthermore, I was also encouraged by my employers to be professionally registered from quite early on as well, through like annual reviews and stuff. In terms of what I value most, it's the demonstrated competency of working, and it helped me apply for more competitive roles within the university.
Thanks, Sophie. Okay, so similar to membership, let's summarise what the benefits of professional registration could be. We've noted already that it's peer assessed, so assessed by others on the register. It's validating that you are demonstrating skills and expertise. That's great for your professional reputation, and it's also great for your confidence. As Sophie just mentioned there, you get the use of post-nominals that you can use after your name, and that can create some interesting debate and discussion when people want to find out a bit more about what you had to do to actually be awarded those. It gives you a bit of kudos. It demonstrates to others that you are committed to high standards of practice, you're committed to lifelong learning, and you're committed to your career growth, whether that's internally or externally. You're becoming part of a wider community of scientists. So you might be a registered scientist or registered science technician in one occupation and sector, or one in quite another, but collectively you are part of that same community. And that means there's opportunity for collaboration and engagement, regardless of your discipline or your sector. For your career ambitions, being professionally registered is not really a static process. Yes, you have to apply at the start, but to maintain it, you have to demonstrate that you're committed to your professional development and that you're maintaining a log of how you're doing just that. So when we're talking about long-term career goals and giving you some kind of framework that might give you some focus in that way, it can be great for maintaining your commitment. And increasingly so for job descriptions, job adverts, personal spec, there's more examples of where professional registration is being put down as either desirable or essential. So it might give you that extra little thing that can give you a shortlist to an interview, or if you just discuss it during your interview itself, it might help you secure a new job. Going back to our research, and when we spoke to apprentices about their aspirations and challenges, in terms of aspirations, apprentices fed back to us that they wanted to remain in and establish their career, complete further qualifications and training, progress to a more senior role, and to become professionally registered. So essentially, they had this commitment to being demonstrated for learning and development. And professional registration can be a vehicle that can really support and enhance that even further. So we've talked about membership and we've talked about registration, and how now does this all link into apprenticeships and maybe the apprenticeship that you're on? So if you're in England, Wales and Northern Ireland on a level 3 or level 4 apprenticeship, or if you're in Scotland and you're on a level 6 and level 7 apprenticeship, it's likely that your apprenticeship will fit well within CSci Tech, registered science technician. If you're on a level 5 or higher apprenticeship in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, or a level 8 to 11 in Scotland, where the levels are slightly different, again, there tends to be more synergy for registered scientists. We do have other registers as well, such as chartered scientist and chartered science teacher. You can find out what the requirements are of that in terms of experience and qualifications. But essentially, and certainly in most cases, for most apprenticeships, you'll find that CSci, registered scientist, and CSci Tech, registered science technician, will best apply. It's probably worth noting as well to think about professional registration a bit more widely. Of course, I'm here to discuss about the Science Council and those particular registers, but there are registers for other professions that would fit in well to whatever occupation you may have. So if you're involved in terms of the environment, the Society for the Environment has a whole series of professional registration. For the Engineering Council, if your work's more aligned to engineering, again, there's opportunity in that space. And from my own personal perspective, I've been involved in education for some time. So I'm a member for the Society for Education and Training, and I've received professional status of qualified teacher and learning skills for the further education sector. So I can use the post-nominals QTLS after my name. It's a similar concept, but relevant to my field of work. Now, the routes to professional registration are varied. It depends on the apprenticeship that you're on. It depends which occupation you're in. What I'm going to try to do here is give a summary of those options that are available to you. And as I noted at the very beginning, the more detailed specific guidance you can access through our website or through discussions with our professional bodies here in attendance. So there's currently 24 apprenticeships in England that offer to you a shortened route into professional registration. Or if you're in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, or on one of the apprenticeships in England that isn't one of those 24, you can still apply, and you apply through the full application route. And I'll be explaining both of those today. This slide are those level 3 and level 4 apprenticeships that have been judged as really well aligned to registered science technician. So if you're on one of these, it means that you're eligible to apply through a shortened route. And for each apprenticeship, it will note whether it's fully aligned or majority aligned. Both mean you get access to a shortened route, but the fully aligned just means there's been even more synergy between the apprenticeship and how the knowledge, skills and behaviours are being developed and the requirements of those competencies. And therefore, there's even a shorter route compared to majority. But I'll summarise that today. And then these are those level 5 to level 7 apprenticeships that have been judged as really well aligned to registered scientists. Again, giving you either a fully or majority aligned judgment and therefore eligibility to apply. Again, all these slides, all this information will be made available to you outside of today's session. So I'm going to go back to Sophie and just ask Sophie, just very quickly, what apprenticeship did you complete? And due to that, which register did you apply for?
I completed the level 5 laboratory scientist apprenticeship, and then from that I applied for the RSci professional registration. I did do the level 3 apprenticeship, but it wasn't offered with the majorly or fully aligned professional registration options at that time.
Yeah, so all the time we're reviewing the new apprenticeships that are available. So it was a level 3 laboratory technician, I believe. So the level 3 laboratory technician now does offer eligibility to apply through a shortened route. And that's why you need to know specifically which apprenticeship you're on, and then come speak to professional bodies or the Science Council, send me an email and we'll be able to guide you on what's the correct route for yourself. Okay, so this is going to be a quick high-level overview of what your application requirements would be. If you're on a fully aligned apprenticeship, that's the one that's the closest with the knowledge, skills and behaviours to the competency requirements, with Sophie's example being laboratory scientist being one, that's fully aligned. There would be 5 parts to an application. The first part is you need to provide a copy of your apprenticeship certificate. So once you've received it, once you've completed your apprenticeship, you have 2 years to use the shortened route. After 2 years, you would have to apply through a full application route. You also have to complete an apprenticeship reflective statement. Now, depending on how much time we have today, I might explain that today, or I might just share some slides. We'll just see how time goes instead. You'll complete 1 competency. So we talked about how there's normally 14 or 15 competencies in an application. For a fully aligned apprenticeship, you just do the 1. And I'll explain what E2 is as an example in a moment. You have an employer who will basically support your application. They're like a reference. They're basically confirming that what you're putting down in your application is a true reflection of your work. And you provide a copy of your CV. And that is streamlined application where the apprenticeship certificate becomes the core of your evidence. For a majority aligned apprenticeship, so an example here would be if you're on a laboratory technician currently, that's judged as majority aligned. You would do all those tasks we just mentioned for a fully aligned application, plus you would also complete 3 more competencies, A1, A2, A3. That's showing that you can apply scientific knowledge in your day-to-day work, and you would still complete E2, which again I'll come on to in a moment. And you would also have to show that you've either completed a qualification during, before or after your apprenticeship, scientific qualification, or even an equivalent. So if you followed a really detailed training plan that you can demonstrate, we can also use that as evidence. Now, 12 of our licensed bodies have opted in to accept applications through this route, and they're listed on this slide. Again, for those who are in attendance today, a number of these are available to speak to in the main foyer. If you're on an apprenticeship and it's not judged as aligned at all, you can still absolutely apply for professional registration. You would use a standard application and you would demonstrate competency by using and completing a full competency report. And support to do just that is available through 3 online workshops that you can register for through the Science Council website. An application support mentor delivers those sessions. They'll give you guidance on what register would be right for you and how to approach those competencies based upon your occupation and job role and sector. In all cases, whether you're doing a streamlined application, a shortened route, or whether you're doing a full application route, as an apprentice, you have an ideal skill set to be a registrant. First of all, you can demonstrate you've got this extensive experience in work. Secondly, you've actually completed a real detailed structured program of learning. You can show that you've developed knowledge, skills and behaviours that are specific to your occupation, specific to industry. We know as apprentices that you have to have really strong reflective practice skills, and you've probably developed really strong independent learning skills as well. And you've also got the skill of logging your learning, probably those off-the-job learning logs that I'm sure you enjoy doing week in, week out, is a great opportunity to show how you can evidence your competence, evidence your ability. And those same skills can apply when you're looking to apply for professional registration. So as a super quick summary, and as we've covered already, if you're on a full application, there are 14 or 15 competencies, depending on the register you select. If you're on a shortened route, which is fully aligned, it's just E2. And if you're majority aligned, it's just the 4. So it's still heavily streamlined compared to a full application. Now, this is the example competency that I wanted just to share today. So we talk about having those 14 or 15 competencies, and this is just one. E2, maintain and enhance competence in own area of practice through professional development activity. And I thought probably the best way to demonstrate this would be ask Sophie for her own insight on how you approach the requirements of that E2 competency and the type of content that you included.
So for me, I talked about things I was doing at the time and what I had planned for training. So I talked about my degree, and at the time of applying, I just started my level 6 apprenticeship. So I talked about research projects I was involved in, training opportunities such as undertaking containment level 3 training, and about other training I give to others. And I also talked about the leadership training I was enrolled in and other aspects of my job, such as the media kitchen service.
So, I mean, examples for that particular competency, you could use things that are relating to work-based learning, professional activity. There might be more formal educational examples that you would give. There might be more self-directed learning through reading and research, or there could be other activities such as voluntary activity that helps you in that space. But essentially what we're trying to demonstrate is that for that particular competency, it's broad and you can kind of contextualize it to your role and the experience that you have and demonstrate it in a way that works for you. So time-wise, we're doing well. So I'm going to go on a little bit and talk about this reflection aspects, because we talked about the shortened route requiring you to do a reflection. Now that reflection is about demonstrating that you're thinking about your past and present experience of being an apprentice and how that's going to help you longer term in your career and how it's going to drive forward your professional development. And the reflection's done in 3 parts. It gets you to think about the what's. Now, what have been the learning experiences of the apprenticeship that have resonated most for you? What type of activities were they? Was it off the job? Was it on the job? Then you think about the so what. So this is where you're thinking about those impacts of those key resonating experiences. How has it improved you in your day-to-day work? And then there's the now what. So how is your experience of your apprenticeship going to help you longer term? What do you need to do in your future performance to keep progressing? Now, the first section of that reflection, the what, is broken down into 3 further questions as listed here. Now, I'm just going to focus on one on each slide today, just in terms of time, but this slide deck will give you the full range so you can see the type of questions you might need to cover. But question 3 of this first part asks you, what aspect of the apprenticeship did you find the most challenging? So if you think about that for yourself, I appreciate that for many of you, you're still actively through your apprenticeship, but there still might be experiences that you've had and challenges you've had to face. Now, the feedback we had from the research was that one of the key challenges that apprentices experience is the balancing of work, life, and study. 68% of our responses said that was the #1 challenge that they've had as an apprentice. Having to adapt learning to be more online. It may be that you're in a cohort that's nationally based rather than local. So again, that means you need to learn those new skills. It may be that you've had to learn some really complex concepts, principles, or techniques that are relevant to your occupation, and taking some time to work out how to contextualize that. You may be finding the challenge of preparing for endpoint assessment a key part, and hopefully sessions like today and the sessions you'll attend later on this afternoon will be supporting you in that way. Then the second section of the reflection, when we looked at the so what, again, there's 3 questions here, but I'm just going to focus on question 6 because it's a natural progression from the one we just covered, talking about challenges. So now we're thinking about what good has emerged from those challenges that you've faced. So again, for yourself, think about the challenges that you faced and where do you feel that's taken you? What good has that brought? And it might be that you feel that you've built some resilience. It may be that you're feeling more confident in your day-to-day job. You may have developed independent learning skills. You may have grown your personal learning network. You may have developed digital learning skills and digital working skills that can really enhance and support your career outside of the apprenticeship. And then the third and final part of that reflection is the now what. So this is when you're starting to think about, well, how is my apprenticeship going to help me as I move forward? And what are the areas that I need to develop? So think about your lifelong learning skills that you've developed, reflection skills, independent research, things such as that. What progression routes are available to you? Is there another apprenticeship you can move on to? Is there an internal promotion? Is there an alternative approach for that? What resources can you access to support, both internally with your employer and externally? And I'm going to go back to Sophie just to ask Sophie, when you did the reflective task, how you approached it and what type of content you included.
So I've just tried to summarise everything I included. So I looked at experiences. So for example, the apprenticeship was useful for incorporating theory into practical experiences, and the impact of developing my skill set meant I was able to support more advanced projects. And it meant pretty early on in my career, I had some work presented at the European Association for Veterinary Anatomists in 2020. Some of the challenging parts of my apprenticeship came from doing my apprenticeship in the pandemic. It changed my company-based project. As Tom said, online learning has its challenges. You haven't just got your peers to ask any informal questions to, and working and study at the same time also has its challenges. And the higher level apprenticeship, the harder it became. And in addition, I was also promoted at work, so I had more responsibility there as well. In terms of career development, the apprenticeship provided me with the foundations to build a career. At the end of the day, I'm 26 years old with over 8 years experience in the science sector, and this puts me in a great position compared to those who are straight out of uni. So areas of development I highlighted for myself at the time were leadership skills, which I improved by undertaking the Herschel programme, which is a programme designed for women aspiring to be in or are in technical leadership, and I'm still continuing to develop my leadership skills through the Leadership and Management Academy programme as well.
That's great. Thank you, Sophie. So in terms of that reflection, it's not about demonstrating competencies. You've already done that by completing your apprenticeship if you use these shortened routes. It's more about showing how you're connecting what you've learned on the apprenticeship and how you're going to move that forward to grow your career even further. So now just starting to bring this back to some type of conclusion, I'm just going to go back to Sophie and ask Sophie, just as a kind of main bit of summary, what advice would you give to apprentices looking to approach a professional registration application, and what support did you find the most useful?
If you can do the shortened application, I'd do it as soon as you can after completing your apprenticeship, and then keep a log of any CPD that you do after that, as it will help you when you come and do your application renewal. And in terms of support, the most was probably having discussions with my line manager, because she'd already been through the professional registration process, so it really helped to have her on hand as well.
Cost. Okay, this is just a quick summary of what the cost could be. So if you're looking to be a registered science technician, the cost is £96.40. For a registered scientist, it's £101.80. And that is a cost if you apply through our common application process, which is a portal through the Science Council website. That does include membership, so that's why it's at that cost level. You may also find, though, that if you approach directly to our licensed bodies, they may have a different promotion, a different pricing model that you can find. So it's definitely worth thinking about the professional body you want to engage with and then having that dialogue to find out what the cost would be. But this is to give you that kind of guide from today and a sense of what professional registration cost and membership can look like. If you're a training provider here or as apprentices, go back to your training provider and tell them that we've got a load of resources that can support and help with professional registration on completion of your apprenticeship. We can deliver tailored workshops right at the end of your course, so we can kind of take you from the point of completing your apprenticeship straight through to professional registration. And as individuals, we have access to loads of online resources, online assets, self-directed content that will take you through the process in a sequenced order. And again, all of that can be accessed through the technical education website. So we've flown through all that content to try to give as much as we can in the 35 to 40 minutes. I think we've got 2 or 3 minutes spare. So I'm happy to take any questions either in the room or online. Has anyone got a mic that can just go over to the gentleman just here? I can hear you fine, but there's a mic coming just along, so just for the online audience as well.
Sorry, I just had a question about the membership. Is that a one-time fee, or would that be something that you would have to renew at certain points?
Membership fee tends to be like an annual renewal process. Of course, every professional body will have its own pricing structure and its different membership levels. So my hope today is I can just maybe inspire the thought of an idea being membership, but I think the best advice I can say is look through the range of professional bodies, have some direct engagement with them and find out how they can best support membership, and then hopefully they can advise about specifically the costs. But yes, it's normally an annual thing that repeats. And similarly for professional registration, it's an ongoing fee rather than just a one-off.
Is there any point in the 4 years, like in our course, that we'll be eligible to apply for the, is it the RSI Tech, and that it will be fully aligned to?
If you're on the level 6 laboratory scientist, that's a fully aligned to registered scientist. You have to complete the apprenticeship to be able to apply through a shortened route. That's not to say that you can't apply for a registered science technician or registered scientist if you feel you've already got the experience and the skills to be able to demonstrate that, but you would have to use the full application route and show all the competencies that have been covered, because essentially it's the apprenticeship certificate that's acting as the evidence rather than the competence report to say that you've already demonstrated those skills, behaviours and abilities.
From online?
Yeah, fantastic.
So I've got a question from Wala Abraham. Can you register with a professional body before you complete your apprenticeship?
You can absolutely seek membership with a professional body before you complete your apprenticeship, and that's absolutely something we would actively encourage. That first part that we were looking at, talking about how membership can enhance your learning experience, absolutely engage with professional bodies today and become a member. They might have student membership, apprenticeship membership, affiliate membership, something that fits in for your particular stage in your career, and they will then support you for professional registration from there. So it becomes hopefully a progression that will kind of naturally occur.
Thanks. And another question, can you ask your employer to pay for your professional body membership?
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of work to try to support and encourage employers to do just that, to become like registrant champions, employer champions in that way. And certainly in the higher education institutions, there's quite a few examples of that as well. But yeah, absolutely speak to your employer and see whether they'd be willing to pay for that, and maybe share with them some of the benefits that we've explored today as a way of the value of doing that, of investing in that way.
So we have time for one more if anyone else in the room has a question.
No?
No.
Okay, well, please grab me at any point if you've got any specific question relating to your personal circumstances in apprenticeships. Speak to the professional bodies out in the foyer. If you're online, please, again, email me if you've got any specific questions. But apart from that, time for lunch. So thank you very much.